luxury, grandeur, and power. In the sparkling corridors of Starlight Hotel, not only guests but also big dreams and hidden emotions walk. Hannah, once an ordinary waitress, rewrote her fate with her courage and determination. However, rising to the top brings not only success but also new challenges. In this world where power, passion, and competition intertwine, Hannah will find herself in a battle not just within the hospitality industry but deep within her heart. So, can everyone who reaches the top stay there? Or is every rise inevitably followed by a fall? Please don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you. Hannah was working long hours at one of the city's most prestigious hotels to support her family. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise, made breakfast for her mother Margaret, sent her sister Sophie off to school, and then hurried to the hotel. The hotel she worked at was a favorite spot for wealthy business people, celebrities, and high society. Hannah worked there as a waitress, but she took every chance to observe everything happening around her, trying to learn every detail, from customer relations to business management. Her dream wasn't just to work there, but to one day manage her own hotel. However, life kept throwing new obstacles in her way. The sudden loss of her father had driven the family into a serious financial crisis. While her mother's health worsened every day, Hannah had to work non-stop so that Sophie could continue her education. Despite the exhaustion, burnout, and uncertainty that filled her days, the drive and determination she carried inside her never wavered. That morning, Hannah woke up as usual before the sun rose. Rubbing her tired eyes, she took a deep breath, knowing that the day would be just as busy as always. She prepared breakfast for her mother Margaret, woke Sophie up, and encouraged her to get ready for school. Watching the sleepiness in her little sister's eyes, she thought to herself, "I worked this hard for her future." Pushing aside her own exhaustion and worries, she smiled and, after sending her sister off at the door, grabbed her bag and left the house. The streets of the city were still chilly, and at the early hour, the roads were deserted. Hannah walked briskly towards the metro, hurrying to make it to her shift at Starlight Hotel on time. In her heart, there was a faint hope that each new day might bring a better opportunity. Maybe today things would go smoothly, maybe Jonas's constant pressure would ease a little. However, as soon as she stepped through the heavy glass doors of the hotel, reality slapped her in the face. Jonas was standing in the lobby with his usual stern expression. As soon as he saw her enter, he furrowed his brows and looked at the clock. "You're not late, but you're cutting it close, Hannah," he said in a mocking tone. Hannah took a deep breath, nodded without saying a word. No matter how hard she tried, she knew Jonas would never appreciate her efforts. Still, she wasn't going to give up. As the day went on, Hannah worked as hard as ever to provide flawless service. She set the tables, attended to the guests, and paid attention to every little detail. The satisfied smiles of the guests were the only things that showed the value of her work. But for Jonas, none of it was enough. During her lunch break, when Hannah decided to step into the kitchen to catch her breath, Jonas suddenly appeared beside her. Eyeing her coldly, he said, "A hard-working person like you should be in a better position, don't you think?" His voice sent a chill down her spine. Hannah understood what he was implying, but she pretended not to care and replied, "I love my job, and I believe I'll be promoted when I'm good enough." Jonas's lips curled into a slight smirk, a sly grin appearing on his face. "Sometimes, being good isn't enough, Hannah. You need to build the right relationships with the right people," he said, winking at her. Despite the anger knotting in her stomach, Hannah tried to stay calm. She needed the job. She had to stay here for her mother and Sophie. But one day, she would get the recognition she deserved. And when that day came, people like Jonas wouldn't be able to stand in her way. That afternoon, Hannah was working tirelessly by the poolside. She was arranging the lounge chairs, folding towels, and fulfilling the guests' requests. The sun was blazing down from directly overhead, sending waves of scorching heat, while the holidaymakers in the cool water chatted happily. While luxury and comfort reigned around the pool, Hannah's mind was filled with the long hours of work and the endless responsibilities she had to carry. As she bent down to adjust a lounge chair, she noticed something was wrong in the water. In the deep end of the pool, a small body was flailing. Within a few seconds, she saw the child desperately waving their arms, their head dipping below the surface. All the fatigue and thoughts she had vanished in an instant. As adrenaline took over her body, time seemed to slow down. She had only a few seconds to make a decision. Hannah didn't scream, nor did she hesitate. Without thinking for even a moment, she dropped everything she was holding and quickly jumped into the pool. As the cool water met her body, all she could hear was the sound of the water rushing around her and the rapid rhythm of her heart. She forcefully moved her arms through the water, swimming towards the child. The small body was sinking further down. Hannah dove quickly, grabbed the child's slender arm, and pulled with all her strength, bringing them back to the surface. When she emerged from the water, the child's face was pale with fear, their eyes wide open. They were struggling to breathe, coughing up water. Hannah held them tightly and pulled them safely towards the poolside. Amid the astonished gazes of the onlookers, she cradled the child in her arms and carried them to the pool's steps. At that moment, the child's mother, Anna, screamed in the air. "Jack!" The woman ran toward them in terror, tears streaming down her face as she embraced her son in Hannah's arms. The small child was coughing and trying to catch their breath, and Hannah gently patted their back to help them relax. "You saved us just in time," Anna whispered, her voice trembling. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. "You saved us from a terrible disaster. We are so grateful." The crowd around them had finally come back to their senses, some staring at Hannah in admiration, while others whispered in disbelief. But for Hannah, the most important thing was that the child was safe. Her heart was still pounding, but one thing was certain: that day, she had saved a life. And that was more valuable than anything else. Hannah, still out of breath, was gently patting the small child's back, oblivious to the water dripping from her clothes. Jack's eyes were still filled with fear, but he was now safe in his mother's arms. The surrounding guests were looking at Hannah in admiration, some were clapping, while others whispered about what had just happened. But at that moment, a harsh voice, cutting through the crowd, only heightened the tension in the air. "Hannah!" Jonas was walking toward them through the crowd, his face bright red with anger. You could feel the fury in his every step. As Hannah watched him approach, she thought to herself, "What, is he going to thank me?" But the harshness in Jonas's eyes told her that exactly the opposite was about to happen. The man stood directly in front of her, arms crossed over his chest, and spoke with an icy tone, "You've overstepped your authority." Hannah couldn't believe her ears for a moment. She furrowed her brows and threw her wet hair back. "What?" she asked, as if she hadn't heard him correctly. Jonas took a deep breath, his usual authoritative tone becoming even colder. "Staff must not put guests in danger or disrupt order. You violated the rules by jumping into the pool without any authority. If the child had been harmed, our hotel would have faced a huge lawsuit." Hannah's blood rushed to her head. "If I hadn't done anything, that child would have drowned," she responded, her voice trembling, but it was out of anger. "No one else even noticed. If I had been a second too late, we would have been facing something much worse." Jonas's face tightened. But instead of listening, he coldly replied, "I don't care." He then delivered the blow, "I'm informing you that your employment has been terminated for overstepping your responsibilities. Pack your things and leave the hotel immediately." Hannah stood frozen in shock. "You're firing me?" she whispered. Some of the nearby guests began to speak in disbelief. A few nodded as if wanting to support Hannah, while Anna stood up angrily. There was a fiery anger in her eyes. "What? You're firing her?" she shouted. "She saved my son's life. If it weren't for Hannah, Jack wouldn't be here right now." Jonas turned sharply toward the woman. Ms. Sanders, our staff must follow certain rules. Someone who acts against the hotel's policies cannot work here. Hannah's fist clenched, but she held herself back with all her might. She stared at Jonas in fury, trying not to let the tears she was holding back escape. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and the only thing she had done was save a child, and now, she was being kicked out. But Anna wasn't ready to let this go. She took a deep breath and walked towards Jonas with firm steps. I don't know who's running this place, but rest assured, I'll be speaking to the owner of your hotel about this. For a brief moment, Jonas's expression faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. This is a private business, and you cannot interfere with our internal operations. Anna narrowed her eyes and smiled slyly. We'll see, she said. Because my husband is one of Daniel, the hotel owner's closest friends. I don't think he'll allow this nonsense to go on. The area grew silent. Jonas's face paled slightly, but he still tried to maintain an air of confidence. However, when Hannah saw the determination in Anna's eyes, the hopelessness inside her slowly began to shift toward tiny fragments of hope. In that moment, she understood something. This wasn't just about being fired, it was about a power struggle. People like Jonas weren't just trying to enforce the rules, they were trying to control the balance of power. But Hannah wasn't going to stop fighting for what she deserved. Anna's promise to speak with the hotel owner, Daniel, could be the turning point for Hannah. Now, she had to wait and see how this battle would unfold. Daniel was sitting at his desk in the hotel management office, watching the security camera footage. On the screen, he could clearly see how quickly Hannah had reacted, noticing the child in danger and jumping into the pool without hesitation. Even a few seconds of delay could have changed everything. But Hannah hadn't hesitated, saving the child without caring for her own safety. Then the footage moved on, showing Jonas angrily approaching Hannah and how he had scolded her. The man's words were clearly audible, "You've overstepped your authority, you didn't follow the rules. You're fired." As Daniel watched the footage, his face gradually tightened. He placed his pen down on the desk, furrowed his brows, and took a deep breath. What Jonas had done wasn't just a bad decision, it was a huge mistake that could tarnish the hotel's reputation. He had punished a hero in front of the guests, in a way everyone could hear. This was unacceptable. Without wasting any more time, Daniel called the hotel manager. Fire Jonas immediately. Notify security to have him pack his things and leave the hotel. The manager on the other end of the phone sounded shocked. But sir, Jonas has been working here for years. Before he could finish, Daniel interrupted him sharply. Jonas was responsible for enforcing the hotel's rules, but he lost his common sense. Firing an employee who saved a child's life is a decision made with arrogance, not responsibility. There's no place for such management in this hotel. Daniel hung up the phone and immediately instructed his secretary to call Hannah to his office. It only took a few minutes for her to arrive. When Hannah stepped into the large office, she was still tense. She had been scolded by Jonas and fired. Now, she was facing the hotel's owner. A voice inside her feared that he might think the same as Jonas. But the expression on Daniel's face was different, firm, but fair. Daniel stood up and spoke to Hannah in a serious yet sincere tone. I watched the security footage. Today, you saved the child of one of our most important guests. Thank you for your courage and sound judgment, Hannah. Hannah blinked in surprise and looked at him in disbelief. But I was fired. Daniel shook his head slightly. No, Jonas made a huge mistake. He no longer works here. And I want to tell you this. If you want to continue working here, our doors are open to you. Hannah was momentarily at a loss for words. Just hours ago, she had felt like she had lost everything, and now her life was taking an entirely new direction. She took a deep breath, feeling her heart race. I love my job, she said finally. But I don't want to stay a waitress forever. I want to grow in hospitality, take on more responsibilities. Daniel saw the passion in Hannah's eyes and smiled slightly. Your courage and hard work are clear. I have an offer for you. Let's talk about your new position at the staff meeting tomorrow morning. In that moment, Hannah felt like she had reached a turning point. She hadn't just been fired and reinstated, she had opened the door to the future she had always dreamed of. Even though people like Jonas tried to stand in her way, Hannah's determination and courage had reshaped her destiny. The next morning, all the staff gathered in the spacious and grand conference room of Starlight Hotel. The elegant flower arrangements on the tables, the room lit with soft yet warm lights, reflected the hotel's luxurious atmosphere, as always. But today, there was a different kind of tension in the air. The employees were curious about how the events by the pool the day before would be reflected in the hotel's management. Daniel confidently walked to the front of the room. Among the curious gazes of the staff, he slipped his hands into his pockets, scanning the room, then spoke in a serious but determined voice. An important event took place at our hotel yesterday. A child's life was in danger, and one of our employees acted without hesitation to save them. Everyone in the room exchanged glances. Hannah stood at the back, her eyes on Daniel, though she still felt a twinge of nervousness. Had she really been saved from losing her job because of someone like Jonas? Daniel continued speaking. That employee, with their courage and sense of responsibility, demonstrated not only that our hotel values its rules but also that we value human life. Unfortunately, this act of bravery was wrongly attempted to be punished. This is completely against our management philosophy. A murmur rose in the room. Most of the employees had heard about what had happened to Hannah, but they didn't know how their boss would approach the situation. After a brief pause, Daniel finished his speech. Jonas was removed from his position yesterday. However, what truly matters now is who we should be supporting in his place. And I have no doubt about that. Daniel's eyes turned to Hannah. Hannah, we need an employee like you, brave and responsible. I won't just reinstate you, I'm promoting you to supervisor. For a moment, the room was silent, and then applause erupted. Hannah, stunned, couldn't find the words to speak. She blinked in disbelief, feeling her heart race. This was the first step towards the future she had always dreamed of. She wasn't just going to stay a waitress, now, she would be in a position where she had a say in the future of the hotel. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her head with a shining smile. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity. I will do my very best. Daniel smiled and nodded. I have no doubt about that, Hannah. Hannah was no longer just a young waitress working for her family. She was now someone who would have a say in the hotel's future. Today marked a new beginning for her. And this beginning was the first step on the road to her dreams. After starting her role as a supervisor, noticeable changes began to take place at the hotel. The tensions that had once existed among the staff began to decrease, team spirit grew stronger, and everyone felt more committed to their work. Hannah wasn't just a manager enforcing rules, she was a leader who stood by her team, listened to their ideas, and motivated them. Guests also started to notice the transformation. The quality of service at the hotel visibly improved, and customer reviews became more positive with each passing day. Hannah was involved in every corner of the hotel, carefully reviewing every detail, from the restaurant's menu to cleaning procedures, and even the division of labor among the staff. Her meticulousness and determination didn't go unnoticed by Daniel. Initially, Daniel had seen Hannah simply as a successful employee, but over time, he realized that his view of her had shifted. It wasn't just that Hannah excelled at her job, it was also her strength, her refusal to give up on her dreams, and the fairness she showed to everyone that affected him. These feelings, which he had avoided admitting even to himself at first, became more apparent during every conversation with Hannah. As time went on, Daniel and Hannah began spending more time together within the hotel. They worked together on special projects, exchanged ideas before meetings, and sometimes took short breaks from the busy work schedule to chat with one another. What had initially seemed like a purely professional relationship was slowly evolving into something more. And eventually, Daniel decided he could no longer hide his feelings. That evening, on the hotel's terrace, one of the most beautiful spots, Hannah was enjoying the light breeze, unwinding from the day's exhaustion. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and a magnificent dance of red and orange unfolded on the horizon. She took a deep breath, reflecting on how far her life had come, from years of struggle to where she was now. At that moment, Daniel approached. After silently taking in the view for a while, he turned his gaze toward her. "You know, spending time with you makes life feel so much better," he said, his voice softer than usual. When Hannah looked into his eyes, she could feel his sincerity. Her heart raced, but the feeling didn't scare her. On the contrary, she felt a warmth inside that brought her peace. With a gentle smile, she lowered her head. "It's nice to hear that," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer. "To me, you're not just a successful employee or a great supervisor, Hannah. You're something else. Your strength, your determination, your conscience. They really move me. And I don't think I want to hide that anymore." Hannah took a deep breath. Just a few months ago, when she was working as an ordinary waitress at the hotel, she could never have dreamed of such a moment. But now, everything was different. When she looked at Daniel, she could see that he wasn't hiding what he truly felt either. "I do too," she said softly, her eyes locked with his. "I feel the same." In that moment, the hotel lights, the noise of the city, and the entire world seemed to fade into the background. Time seemed to stop for both of them. The bond between them was no longer just professional. It was something much deeper. After months of intense work, exciting preparations, and unexpected developments, Hannah and Daniel said yes to each other in a dreamlike wedding in the magnificent garden of the hotel. That day, the atmosphere of the hotel was more enchanting than ever. The lights hanging in the garden competed with the stars, the fresh flowers on the tables filled the air with their lovely scent, and the guests gathered together with great excitement to share this special day. All the hotel staff were giving back the years spent with Hannah, sharing in her happiness. This hotel was no longer just a workplace, it was like a family. As Hannah's tulle skirt fluttered gently in the wind, she turned her eyes to the people she valued the most, her mother Margaret and her sister Sophie. As she hugged them, tears welled up in her eyes. "You've been my greatest inspiration to get this far," she whispered. Margaret gently stroked Hannah's hair, her eyes shining with pride. "Your father would be so proud of you if he were here, Hannah," she said, unable to hold back her tears. Sophie, excitedly hugging her sister, said, "You've always been my hero." As the wedding went on, when Hannah and Daniel looked at each other, it felt like time stood still. Daniel, holding her hands, spoke softly but firmly, "I want to spend my life with you. You've become my greatest gain, not only in my work but in my life as well." At that moment, everything became clear for Hannah. The journey she started at this hotel had not only been a career rise, but also the path to the greatest happiness of her life. She smiled slowly and replied, "I love you more than anything." Daniel gently cupped Hannah's face in his hands and placed a soft kiss on her lips. The guests applauded enthusiastically as the couple moved toward the dance floor. Under the shimmering lights and stars, they took the most important step of their lives. Over time, Hannah and Daniel not only progressed in managing the hotel but also in their lives together. Thanks to their vision and passion, Starlight Hotel became the most prestigious hotel in the city. As Hannah became a renowned businesswoman in the hospitality industry, Daniel was proud to grow alongside her. But their greatest joy came a few years later with the birth of their daughter Isabella. The little girl became the most precious gift of the new life Hannah and Daniel had lovingly built. Hannah's story was the greatest proof that this journey, which began as a waitress, could turn into something much bigger. Her determination, courage, and the right people around her showed that anything is possible when everything aligns. She was no longer just a successful businesswoman, she was also the heart of a family she lovingly raised and a hotel she managed with passion and effort. And most importantly, she was now truly where she belonged with the people she loved, in the life she had built. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing content. Your support means the world.